Okay, welcome to the April 17th Capital Investment Committee meeting. We have a quorum. They're assembling. We've got 6 bills on the docket today. We're going to lay them all over, and we have a nice turnout, if you will. So let's just start out. We've got Senate File 3095. Senator Paul Anderson is going to present the Brooklyn Park statewide Second Harvest Heartland Charitable Food Facility Grant Bond Issue and Appropriation. Welcome to the committee, Senator Anderson, and proceed with your testimony, and certainly we look forward to hearing from your guests.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Thank you for the opportunity to present Senate File 3095 this afternoon. I want to say a special thanks to the co-authors of this bill, yourself, Mr. Chair, Senator Pappas, Senator Eichhorn, and Senator Eaton. This legislation appropriates $18 million to be invested in a statewide food distribution center operated by Second Harvest Heartland and located in the city of Brooklyn Park. I know many of you here are familiar with the project and the critical role that Second Harvest Heartland serves in communities in each of our districts and across the state of Minnesota. Members, you may know the stats, but here they are. Hunger impacts 1 in 10 Minnesotans. 1 in 6 Minnesota children do not have enough food to eat and go to bed hungry every night. It is pervasive in the cities, the suburbs, and throughout greater Minnesota. This reality is deeply concerning to me and many of my constituents, which is why I jumped at the opportunity to help this tremendous statewide asset by addressing the critical needs in all of our communities. Last year, Second Harvest Heartland distributed over 81 million meals to nearly 1,000 food shelf partners and reached hundreds of thousands of hungry Minnesotans. The effort was largely achieved through Second Harvest Heartland's direct engagement with its established network of corporate and nonprofit partners and Minnesota growers who rely on Second Harvest Heartland to effectively donate critical food support. Second Harvest Heartland's one-time $18 million request will be utilized to renovate an existing building that will double its dry storage capacity, significantly expand its ability to store fresh produce, and allow its fleet of semi-trucks to maneuver effectively. I know those of you who toured the Maplewood facility last fall understand just how necessary that improvement will be for trucks going in and out every day. Most importantly, this investment of taxpayer dollars will create 100 new jobs in the region, generate 48 million more meals annually for hungry Minnesotans, and help keep more people healthy, working, and contributing to our state's economy. This project is truly unique from most of the bonding projects we'll have a chance to vote on this or any session. First, it's truly statewide. Every member will be able to return to his or her district and claim local support for healthy families, children, and seniors in all those food shelves. Second, this opportunity comes with tremendous financial leverage. Companies, church groups, schools, retirees, farmers, and grocers will provide more than $100 million in in-kind support every year to make this go. And my understanding is that's north of $140 million in in-kind support. We just need help with this building to collect this community abundance and goodwill. Finally, this model of this is truly what I envision, a model of what a public-private nonprofit partnership ought to look like. A winning organization solving the problem in our community with a place for each of us to participate, including the state in this narrow but critical way. On behalf of Rob Ziske, Chief Executive Officer at Second Harvest Heartland, and many of my constituents who donate their time, talent, and treasure to this incredible organization, I want to express my strong support of Senate File 3095, which appropriates this $18 million of general obligation bond funding to Second Harvest Heartland's new distribution center in the city of Brooklyn Park. And with that, Mr. Chair and members, I'd like to turn it over to Rob and our very special guest today for further comments.
Welcome to committee, Mr. Ziske. Would you state your name, and we certainly look forward to your testimony.
Yes, thank you. My name is Rob Ziske. I'm the CEO of Second Harvest Heartland. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members. Appreciate your time today. Appreciate also Senator Anderson introducing our bill. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your time visiting and touring and inviting your caucus to pack with us and see some of our work firsthand. So thank you to the members who were able to do that. That was a fantastic day, and we really appreciate it, as did the neighbors that we were able to serve during that time.
Mr. Ziske, we're going to do that again this year.
All right. Excellent. We would welcome you back. Thank you so much. We present today what we believe is a winning project with enormous benefit for the entire state of Minnesota. In a few minutes, I'm going to turn my time over to my friend Andrew Zimmern, who is the honorary chair of Second Harvest Heartland's Fueling the Future campaign, is an internationally known and acclaimed chef, and you also likely know that he is a tireless advocate for food security, not only nationally and internationally, but especially right here in his adopted state of Minnesota. But first, I want to talk a little bit about the problem that we see and that this bill is addressing. As Senator Anderson said, 1 in 10 Minnesotans is struggling to find food in our state, and shockingly, 1 in 6 children. Here in 2018, in the breadbasket of the world's wealthiest nation, in the Silicon Valley of food, over 600,000 neighbors turned to food shelves, meal programs, and homeless shelters last year alone. And while we have traditionally cast this as an issue as one of moral importance, critical to the dignity of our neighbors and our own humanity, which it is also, according to the University of Minnesota, a multi-billion-dollar problem. Young children struggling to learn in schools that deploy billions of dollars of well-meaning resources when they are hungry is a challenge. In the words of one researcher, trying to teach hungry kids is like trying to fill up a leaky bucket. Seniors who are hungry spend more time in the hospital, and low-income Minnesotans who have to choose between food and rent or food and a car payment make the rational choice to buy cheap calories, which is a direct on-ramp to expensive diet-driven illnesses like type 2 diabetes and hypertension. Food does matter to our humanity, but it also matters to Minnesota's bottom line. This is where Second Harvest Heartland comes in. Across our service area, 75% of the food that food shelves distribute and hot meal programs distribute and community programs comes from us. We've grown rapidly over the past decade to meet the incredible demands of need following the recession, and we have a long way to go. We're the backbone of hunger relief in Minnesota, touching every county and focusing on nutrition to better combat the diet-driven illnesses that I just mentioned. This year alone, 60% of the food that we distribute will be fresh, which is a radical change from just several years ago when we relied mostly on boxes and cans. In fact, in a recent survey of our clients performed with General Mills, we found that over 60% of food shelf clients across the state get all or most of their produce from us. This brings us to our project. For 30 years, we have been housed in a warehouse in Maplewood, and according to our annual reports, we distributed less than 2 million pounds of food those first years, almost 100% of that shelf-stable. This year, we are on pace to distribute more than 100 million pounds of food, and most of it fresh. But we're out of space to do more. Our warehouse is never designed to handle this much food, nor fresh food. We are also lacking in the critical space, as you may have noticed in your time there, to engage the demand for volunteers that help us repack the truckloads of Minnesota produce that we could be harnessing every year. We have abundant resources of food from farms and grocery stores, as well as arms and legs from volunteers, but we need a new space to make this happen. We have never in our decades-long history come to the state for bonding support, despite providing a vital, dynamic, and efficient service for the whole community. We've eked out efficiencies and capacity over decades, as you and your community would expect us to do, but we've simply reached our limits. In keeping with our values, we come with a project that is shovel-ready with a nearly 2-to-1 match in hand. We request $18 million from the state out of a $50 million campaign, and we have a perfect facility that we've identified in Brooklyn Park that will be able to serve the state. In addition to the match for the bonding, our community is ready to apply the cash, the food, and the volunteers to make our new facility a massive leverage point for nutrition, for health, and community good for decades to come. This year alone, private companies, foundations, and individuals will donate more than $125 million in cash and food for us to distribute. We plan to grow from there. We're eager to learn of other projects that can provide such enormous financial leverage, matching an $18 million bonding request with $125 million per year in perpetuity. This is a project to be proud of, supporting healthy food access through the dynamic, efficient, nonprofit system that is a model in every one of your districts. There's a role in this project for everyone, for volunteers of time, for food manufacturers, for growers, for financial donors, grocers, for students engaged in service learning, for faith-based groups who operate local food shelves and meal programs, and there is a role for the state. For $140 million organization that runs on charitable gifts with a median size of $47, that is our median gift size, we need your help at this time for a once-in-a-generation investment. We don't sell tickets, we don't charge admission fees, we don't collect rent, and we don't collect a reimbursement for the services that we provide to our neighbors in need. In return for this one-time support, we will engage our community in service, increase the amount of healthy foods available to our low-income neighbors, offset health care costs, and help children thrive in school so that we can all be the people and the economy that we want to be. This can't wait. Some private donors to our campaign have made their funding contingent upon our bonding support this year, believing that they expect the state to contribute its share. But more important, right now, kids in Miss Vicky's kindergarten classroom in Frogtown, not far from here, are falling behind in school because they show up hungry. In her words, some of my kids are in survival mode. In St. Cloud at Centricare clinics, patients screen for hunger more than twice as often as any other social need and cost us more in visits to the ER, in insulin, and prenatal care because they don't have the right kinds of foods, placing a strain on our healthcare costs. And this summer and fall, Minnesota growers will plow under hundreds of millions of pounds of edible crops in this state, according to the USDA and our own conversations with growers, because they can't find a market from them, and we are not currently in a position to help them right now. I suggest that hunger is Minnesota's largest solvable problem, and we're asking you to help us take the next critical step in our efforts to solve this problem with a vital winning project. It's now my pleasure to turn my time to Andrew Zimmern, who has been a longtime friend of this work, of our neighbors, and we're delighted to hear more about the support that you have for the campaign. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, and wonderful story, and thank you so much for it. Mr. Zimmern, Zimmern, right? Zimmern, okay.
Thank you, Senator.
All right. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you. My name is Andrew Zimmern, and I appreciate the time and the opportunity to talk to you today about what I believe is Minnesota's most solvable problem, a problem that I think is available right now, this year, at this moment, something that we can stake claim to as Minnesotans as being a national leader on this issue by eradicating hunger across our state. Mr. Chair and committee members, thank you for allowing me to testify today. Senator Anderson, thank you for your leadership on this legislation. I am here, as Rob stated earlier, in my capacity as the honorary chair of Second Harvest Heartland's capital campaign, but also as someone who cares very deeply about the issue of hunger for reasons I will share with you shortly. I believe we can end hunger in Minnesota, and you play a critical role right now in making an investment in this effort that will help hundreds of thousands of Minnesotans. 540,000 Minnesotans at a minimum are estimated to be food insecure, lacking consistent access to food to lead a healthy life. I know many of you here know about Second Harvest Heartland and the role it serves as the hub of Minnesota's emergency food system. The food that Second Harvest Heartland distributes to its network of food shelves and food banks reaches communities in every single corner of the state. It's not just the big cities, it's not just Hennepin County, and it's proportional to the need in every single county across the entire state of Minnesota. We all know the statistics. Hunger impacts 1 in 10 Minnesotans. 1 in 6 Minnesota children do not have enough food to eat. That is not a shameful statistic. In my estimation, that is a criminal statistic. Hungry children in a state that has the food to feed them. We just don't have the funnel big enough until we fund Second Harvest Heartland to be able to get the food into the tables and plates of those that need it the most. These are real people who can't reach their full potential because they lack something we all take for granted every single day. The reality is deeply concerning to me, which is why I feel compelled to join my friend Rob Zeski here today. Last year, Second Harvest Heartland distributed over 81 million meals to nearly 1,000 food shelf partners and reached hundreds of thousands of hungry Minnesotans. This is an organization that has earned the trust of Minnesotans for delivering on their commitment to those who rely on the food they provide. I can't underscore this enough. This is a winning organization solving the problem in our community with a place for each one of us to participate. Minnesota's generous corporations, church groups, schools, retirees, farmers, and grocers. I work across the nation helping to solve hunger issues. I work tirelessly for international organizations trying to solve hunger and refugee issues. I spend a vast majority of my time living and breathing this problem. And I can tell you right now that there are very few organizations globally that have drilled down on this and are resourceful and as committed and as successful at creating a model for feeding people as Second Harvest Heartland. You have today a model in front of you for what a public-private nonprofit partnership ought to look like. A one-time investment that will create 100 new jobs in the region, generate 68 million more meals for hungry Minnesotans, and help keep more people healthy, working, and contributing to our state's economy. In my estimation, we simply can't afford not to do this when annually $840 million is the cost of hunger problems to the state per year in healthcare and education costs and lost productivity. $18 million spent to solve an $840 million a year problem. More important to me is the morality of the issue. It is why Second Harvest Heartland is so important to me. We've all heard the age-old admonition, we are what we eat. What if what you eat isn't enough, or if it's nothing? What are you? What are your outcomes? What are we saying to people who are lacking the very basic human need of food if we turn our backs on them, when there is a solution right there in front of us that we can activate right now? I hate to put it so bluntly, but anyone who's against funding this bill and getting $18 million into the hands of the folks at Second Harvest Heartland has to be against feeding Minnesotans and by statistics against feeding children. There is no better or more proven way to successfully guarantee the outcomes of eliminating hunger in our state than by this investment in Second Harvest Heartland. I came to Minnesota 27 years ago. I was a homeless drug addict and alcoholic living on the streets of New York. I was found by some friends and put on a plane and one-way ticket, spent 6 weeks in a treatment center, then 6 months at a halfway house in St. Paul, and began to rebuild my life here. I have an unmeasurable amount of gratitude for everything that Minnesota has done for me. It's often referred to in the public level, at press, radio, et cetera, as being my adopted home state. When I tell people about it, this is my home state. This is where I live. This is where my family lives. This is where I own 3 businesses. This is where I employ a lot of Minnesota families who work for me in those businesses. I love this state. This state gave me my life back. It was its generosity that healed me. It was its offering of respect and dignity that healed me and allowed me to become a functional member of society. It wasn't money. Nobody gave me a handout. Nobody said, you don't have to work, here's something for free. What I got was dignity and respect and an opportunity. And that's what I'm here asking for you to do today, to allow us, through this gift to Second Harvest Heartland, to allow them to sprinkle people for whom hunger is most likely a very serious stigma. There are very few people who suffer from hunger relief issues that aren't affected by the stigma that comes with it. It's not like other isms. There's no one who's sitting out there and saying, the heck with it, I'm hungry. This is a traumatic event for people in their lives, and it's affecting our neighbors who are all around us. By funding Second Harvest Heartland with the $18 million they need to complete a much more massive cost for creating the new facility, We are allowing them to sprinkle people with dignity and respect and allowing people to do what they cannot do for themselves, which to me is the most basic fundamental issue that we have in front of us. Are we willing to do for people who are hungry what they cannot do for themselves? And I think the answer has to be yes. I don't want to live in a city, a community, a state, or a country that turns its back on hungry people. At its very, very basic level, that's what funding this means. And I'm looking forward to being there on opening day and helping cut a ribbon and celebrating the success that we have, because it will mean that within a few years, we really have a shot at eliminating hunger insecurity in Minnesota. And that would be a national trendsetter. We are national leaders in how we take care of people. Let's do it with food. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Zimmern. Zimmern.
Yeah.
I'll get that down. I'll get that down.
I'll answer to all of them.
All right, okay. We actually thought we ought to have a kitchen here today, but we did. Comments or questions from the members? Yes, Senator Lane.
I totally support the project. I totally support everything you do. I just have a question as to how you come up with your statistics. 1 in 10 households, not people, or and then like in my district, you say almost 2 million missing meals a year. How do you determine missing meals? How do you determine 1 in 10 households?
Mr. Ziske?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. So there's several ways that we get our statistics through a variety of partnerships. We have partnered with the University of Minnesota's food industry in the past. They did our return on investment numbers around the cost of hunger in our state, which were modeled on other similar studies that happened at Brandeis University and was done by Harvard. For our missing meals numbers, Feeding America is our national partner. We are a member of the Feeding America Collective, and Feeding America has annually kept those statistics. And those are based on an assumption of 3 meals a day and have been calculated in 2 different ways, one of which is Bureau of Labor Statistics numbers and the balance of meals that literally are not met. But they've also done year-long kind of regression analyses on the number of people as compared to unemployed as well as poverty rates that give us those numbers. So verified from academics at the University of Illinois have been our partner for that specific statistic for years.
Good. Senator Lane, is that fine? Okay, anyone else? Senator Newman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're laughing over here because Senator Champion is teasing me. I hate to say too much after such a passionate presentation, and I want folks to know that I truly do appreciate the issue and the fact that hunger is something that we should strive to eliminate. But I want to ever so gently remind the members that only a few days ago we had a conversation about the fact that we already own more buildings and more assets in the state of Minnesota than we can possibly maintain. And this is a wonderful project. But we are once again going to look at obtaining yet more property that we will have to maintain and ensure, and in the future make sure that the roof doesn't leak. And I just want members to just think about that issue and all of the money that we talked about that we need to try and take care of the buildings that we already own in the state of Minnesota and can't afford them and can't afford to do that. So that's my only thought. Thank you, Mr.
Senator Newman, this is actually, I believe the city of Brooklyn Park will own this building. They're the sponsor, so to speak. Obviously, Second Harvest has an agreement, but this will not become a state facility. This will be a local facility. Mr. Zeske.
And Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate that. I'm referring to, overall, government facilities, and so sure. I do appreciate the difference.
But as long as we're on the point, Mr. Zeske, could you just clarify the sponsorship?
Yes, the city, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
The city is indeed the sponsor of this project, and while it is a local sponsor, it is a statewide project. To the senator's question, I think we have never expected that we would be asking for additional dollars to support any kind of deferred maintenance or upkeep over time. That would be part and parcel of our ongoing capital investment in the building.
Senator Anderson.
Yep, and
Yeah.
Mr. Chair and Senator Newman, I really appreciate your comments. At first blush, had the same thoughts that you did on when it comes to bonding projects, we need to be very careful. The magnitude of this project when it comes to the partnerships and what it distributes around the state to over 1,000 food banks, to each of our communities in every quarter, we said in the press conference early, from Ada to Zumbrota. I mean, it truly touches each of our communities, each of our cities. The magnitude is incredible. The corporate partnership, the community partnerships in time, talents, and treasures when it comes to our places of worship and our communities that invest their time and energy. I guarantee you in the days to come, if you haven't, you will hear from these folks. So I would just say, I know everybody's got their favorite projects. This is just a very, very special opportunity in this moment in time to really, as Andrew stated, attack this problem that we face, which we shouldn't in Minnesota. So thank you.
Yeah. Senator Osmick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Anderson, I wanted to sort of piggybacking on Senator Newman's comments, I just want to talk about lines 1.14 and 1.15. My reading of this is that your bill requires an equal or greater match from private sources before the encumbered 18 million would be released. Is that the plain reading of English today? I'm just checking to make sure I'm reading that correctly.
Senator Anderson.
And Mr. Chair and Senator Osmick, so the match right now is 32 million. That's already committed. I can have Mr. Zieski comment further, but that's already been committed.
Yes, Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
that is right. For the 18 million, we will be committing $32 million of private sources, and the match is already in hand and ready to go.
Thank you.
Senator Osmick.
And sort of as a response to Senator Newman, without getting too close to biting his hand, the state has entered into a number of public-private partnerships previously. Particularly, I can think of one right off the top of my head. The bridge interchange at 169 and Bren Road was not supposed to get done, and a certain company that I work for actually provided a certain amount of private funds to push that up the list to get it done faster. So in a way, this is going down the same route of a public-private partnership. Don't get me wrong, I'm in favor of it. But we have other places where we have gone in this direction. I guess it's just a matter of whether we should or shouldn't. And then one final question or comment to Mr. Zimmern. We met a couple of years ago. I don't know if I'd use the comment, "You are what you eat," based on your TV shows. I'd be very careful about that.
Mr. Zimmern.
Senator, if I may, one man's weird is another man's wonderful, my friend.
But you don't like walnuts, Mr. Zimmern. I don't understand
I have a big
that.
surprise for you in the upcoming season. I actually have found a walnut that I like.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, Senator Herb.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome, Mr. Andrew Zimmern, and thank you, Senator Anderson. And we know that there's a dedicated fan next to me here, Mr. Zimmern. My question is to Mr. Zinski, and this project is good, and I believe the current location is on the corner of 61 and Highway 36, right? That's kind of considered, the east side in some area, and the east side is known to be a food desert area. So, but my question is not about that. My question is that you did mention a little bit about serving the school. Can you elaborate on that? Being that I was just visited by a Montessori in my district, and I think they're board of that facility are still here in this committee too. So can you elaborate how you work with the school?
Mr. Ziske.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Thank you, Senator, for the question. Yes, there's a number of ways that we work with schools. In addition to our traditional work, wholesaling to other nonprofit partners, increasingly we've been working directly with schools. As we've all discussed, the challenge for kids who are disproportionately in our community likely to suffer from food insecurity and hunger is of huge importance. I came directly from early education into the work in the hunger field and have seen firsthand the challenges that the kids face when they don't have enough resources. They don't have enough food to be able to do their work. So we focused very specifically on partnerships with with schools. We have direct programs where we are surrounding schools with produce drops. And so one of our most important resources, as I had mentioned, is Minnesota-grown produce that is just not making its way to market right now. And we know that that's the kind of produce that is helping kids and families thrive with healthy, wholesome food. And so in many cases across the state, we will partner either with our local food shelves or with schools and have free pop-up farmers markets for schools. And so particularly as happens, I had mentioned Miss Vicki in Frogtown and certainly in St. Paul, but also in western and southwest Minnesota. This is a way for us to move fresh, nutritious, but highly perishable produce very quickly in ways that we sometimes can't through our traditional supply chain. So we found that schools are often high need, but also ways that we can provide more mobile pantries, as we call them, too, to make sure we're getting to those kids and their families that need additional help. That's one of several ways.
Okay, good. Well, I want to thank you for being here today with us. Senator Anderson, any concluding remarks on this one?
Yeah, just quick, Mr. Chair, just again, Senator Pappas and Senator Eichhorn, thank you for your support and your co-authoring, Senator Pappas and Senator Eichhorn and Senator Eaton, whose home is the new location. Just again, when you think of the magnitude of the in-kind donations that come from our farmers and from our really generous corporate partnerships here in Minnesota, you're talking about $100 million of product coming in and then being distributed across the state. You're talking about increasing that capacity up to 40% or even more. I mean, the impact on this is really statewide and it's tremendous. So I just thank you for the opportunity to hear the bill.
Thank you for your testimony, and we wish you a good day. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Zimmern.
Yes. He's going to get it.
And of course, Mr. Ziske. Two Z's, too many Z's today. Great, wonderful. Oh, yes. So Senate File 3095 will be laid over for possible inclusion. Moving on then